All right, what is happening, everyone? Welcome to another exciting and legendary episode of The Forge. We got a special guest tonight. We are so glad that each and every one of y'all are with us. What is happening, Billy? Why don't you introduce everything that's going on? I'm going to kind of be more the behind the scenes guy today. Billy's usually that kind of guy too as well, but I'm going to be that. Billy, I know you're excited, so let's get going.
Absolutely. Super excited. Everybody, thank you for joining us tonight on this beautiful February evening. We've got Christopher Horton over here from TF3PK, one of our favorite groups on the internet. And he brought along the amazing Don Glut. Don is a longtime Transformers legend. He is a writer of our favorite show. He also wrote some really cool shows such as Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, DuckTales, Dino Riders, which I wish we still had. It was my favorite show growing up. So this guy sculpted my childhood and yours.
Yep.
So Chris, Don, why don't you guys say hello? Give us a little bit about yourself. Whoever wants to start, please be my guest. And then I'm going to get to the folks in the chat because there's a lot of people saying hello tonight.
I'm gonna get the honors to Don. Let him go first. Let him introduce himself. This is the legend here. It's not about me. It's about this young man.
So Don, tell us
I'm
a bit
sorry,
about
what?
yourself.
About myself? Well,
Yes.
I was hatched in Pecos, Texas, long time ago when dinosaurs still roamed the earth. And I've had many careers over the years. So a lot of people know me from different areas. Some people know me from music. Some people know me from comic books. Some from novels. Some from TV cartoons and things. Some from paleontology. I never started out as a writer. That's what most of my income comes from. I, I, my main goal was not to get a normal job, in a regular
That's
job where
it.
you went in for 40, 40-hour week, work doing something you didn't particularly enjoy doing, and you couldn't wait for the job to end so you could go home on the weekend. My goal was to get a job where you couldn't wait until it started, and then it was kind of depressing when it ended. But what I really started off, what my main goal wasn't to be a writer, wasn't to be an actor or these other things I've done. It was I wanted to be a rock star. Music was always my main love, and my main talent I think has always been music. And so for the first few years, when I reached early adulthood, when I had to start thinking about supporting myself, I was a musician, and I played in the band for a few years. That was a rock band in California that was produced by Mike Nesmith, who was one of the Monkees at that time. And when that all collapsed, I had to find something else to do, which other than getting a no job. And so I tried a few things. You throw enough darts at the wall, at the target, one will hit the bullseye. And I always liked to write. When I was a kid and a teenager, I wrote a lot of fanzine articles and things like that. So I writing, and that's what I've done most of my work at over the many decades that I've been alive and been a professional. So that's pretty much where it all started, and where I started in Pecos, Texas, and grew up in Chicago, and moved out to California, uh, ostensibly to go to USC Film School. But I really, I wanted to get away from home. I wanted to get away from Chicago. And also, I was out here for a vacation once, uh, 2 years before I moved out here. And I was, 8 years old. And I never saw many pretty girls in my life in one place. And I said, that's where I want to go. And I've been there ever since.
Love it. Absolutely love it. That's such a cool story. Uh, that is a really cool story, actually. I sang for years. I toured singing. So music, I get it. And now I'm an engineer. So, I got the 9 to 5 part. You get to live like a rock star. Um, so, Chris, um, man, it's so good to have you back. We love you. You are part of our family. How did you come across Don and his situation? and bring forward this. Like you guys have a GoFundMe to help Don with the situation that came up, right?
Right.
What inspired this? Like, how did you? Because you and Don have been working together. What brought this on, and how are things going, and how can we as a community help?
So what brought this on is I can't take all the credit for myself. So one of the moves that we're moving into for the third party kingdom is getting more legendary legends such as Dunn to come and join the group. We've been me and Jonathan Williams have been reaching out to some of these writers, that sparked us to where we are now with these storylines, rather regardless of the genre. And he told me that, hey man, he reached out to Dunn and he read this horrible story to him. He said, man, I feel like we got to do something. And so Jonathan already knows me, man. When I hear something like this, I'm a helper, I'm a giver, man. And one thing that a lot of people do know, and some people don't know, for you that don't know, man, I am an extreme advocate for my elders, man, because I always say, if I can't look at my elder and see where I came from, and my elder can't look at me and see where he's going, then we have an issue here, right?
Yeah.
So I got a very deep compassion for my elders, and when he told me the story, man, I said, man, let's brainstorm this. So we did the Don F Glut raffle. It was a success, and we got some more things coming to help them out. And man, that GoFundMe, y'all, I think I posted it in the group before, the GoFundMe. Please do support the GoFundMe. But with Transformers Third Party Kingdom, we want to be a little bit more different, because we understand that the GoFundMe do charge some fees for
They
having
do.
it. So what we wanted to do was bypass all that when we did the raffle and give it directly to Mr. Glut.
Okay, love that.
Let me explain what the GoFundMe thing is all about. I am a very skeptical person. I don't believe, I don't believe Elvis is alive. I don't believe there's a Bigfoot, and I check everything out. But I had my identity stolen, and the scam was so convincing. I mean, worse than losing the money almost is falling for this scam. But I fell for a scam, and I lost. As a result, most of the money that was in my bank. And I took the case to the police, to the FBI, to 3 different attorneys, and the most promising attorney told me it was most likely he couldn't get like Wells Fargo Bank, which is where I had my money, to accept any responsibility. And if he could get any money at all, it would basically make him, I would lose paying him what was left in my bank account, the little that was left there. So I had no choice. I'm still working and everything, but there's a lot of bills that come up when you're not expecting it. And so I launched a GoFundMe campaign. And thanks to Chris and Jonathan, it raised some money, but it's a long, long way of getting back to where I was, because the scam money is probably gone forever. So anyway, that's what that's all about. But let's talk about something more.
Yep, we're going to. I just wanted to give a history for our people in the chat, which we've shared the link to. We've got some people asking some questions. Texetta has brought up, when you were writing for shows like Transformers or other well-known IPs, how much freedom did you actually have versus working within toy company restraints? And I think that's a pretty good question.
With the toy companies, you got to understand one thing. We were writing, well, basically what were half-hour commercials to sell toys. And when I wrote my first Transformer episode, I think that was Divide and Conquer. It gave me a Bible. Now a Bible, it's not like like the Holy Bible. Oh. The Bible is a booklet that tells all the backstory and origins of all the characters and what they could do, what their powers were, what their personalities were like, yada yada yada. And there were a lot of Transformers, and I said, well, which one of the characters? I mean, how are we going to fit them all in? Who do you want in the story? They said, put them all in and have them all do something. So I did that. The first three, in later stories, I emphasized certain characters, but that first one, everybody, it was like a field day. Everybody um, got to do something, but the term that they used was push product, and we were selling toys. I think eventually, because there were the commercials, the actual commercials for the Transformers toys. I think the FCC came in and said you can't do that. That's just too much. So they would have other products being sold in the commercials. But that's what we did. And my two story editors, Bryce Mellick and Dick Robbins, when I came in, I got the feeling that they really didn't understand what the show was all about, because they weren't like your standard Saturday morning cartoons involving superheroes or talking dogs or anything like that. They were these robots, and the robots were, commonplace in Japanese television shows, but not in the United States. So I had pretty much free reign.
Okay.
And we didn't have the censorship problems we had with the network shows, because it was, they weren't, the network shows were all really governed by the censors, and there was a lot of things you couldn't do, and some of the things were ridiculous. You couldn't do. I couldn't say the word. They considered that violence.
Oh my goodness!
That actually happened. And I could tell you, we could do a whole story on network censorship of cartoons. And for those shows, I wasn't writing them for the kids. I was writing them for the censors to see what would pass and what wouldn't pass. But the Transformer shows, we didn't have those restrictions because they were syndicated shows. And so I got away with a little bit more in the, call it violence, action, whatever you want to call it. But I understood. See, I had friends in Japan, and they would send me videotapes of all these Japanese giant robot shows. So I knew those shows. I knew, I was eventually in later years, I actually did voiceovers, acting in some of those shows. But
I'm so jealous.
Transformers, I knew what those shows were about. I was also a huge fan of the Toho Godzilla movies, the kaiju movies. Yes. Godzilla, Rodan, Mothra, Baragon, all those characters. And so
absolutely,
I wrote those cartoons, those Transformers cartoons, fantasizing that I was writing Godzilla movies and things, and Ultraman, because I did write an Ultraman script. I was hired by Super to write for an American Ultraman movie that never got made. This is all before my Transformers now. So I had experience with this kind of stuff, giant monsters, giant robots. And so I just write in when they did, when Transformers came up. But I had pretty much free reign. And I don't know when it finally took Dick and Bryce to catch on what the show was all about. But I caught on pretty quick.
All right, that's amazing. I love that. Growing up, Godzilla, the old Godzilla movies were everything to me. So now I figured out, with you writing, basing this off of movies I grew up on, there's my love of Transformers. We have another question. This is from Timas. His question is, if you were offered a gig at a continuation of the original Sunbow productions of Transformers into a live action series, what stories would you introduce after the later seasons?
I don't know. You hit me kind of cold on this, but I only saw 2 seasons. I wrote the first 2 seasons and one on the 3rd season, 1 episode. And Sun did not do the first 2 seasons. So Marvel Productions, which did Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, the Hulk, RoboCop, they did the first 2 seasons. And then Sunbow, which was doing G.I. Joe, took over Transformers.
Got it. And
then they had a whole new writer. It was like the Sunbow writers show with season 3, I think it was. I wrote a dozen of the original first and second Marvel production shows.
Got it. Well, thank you for letting us know that. That probably explains why the G.I. Joe music started kicking in later seasons of Transformers, where like I always noticed the music changes. And then Texetta wants to know, you created so many memorable characters and stories. Do you have a favorite project that didn't get the recognition that you thought it deserved?
Are you talking about in the Transformers or just in general?
I think this is
or,
in general.
well, I didn't create any of the Transformers. I sort of did in one episode. That was Autobot Spike, when I created that Frankenstein where they were made out of jars. You know, that was my original.
Autobot
But
X.
all the other ones, yeah, all the other ones were given to me. The only characters I created would be probably, except for my own movies that I made, and novels I wrote, would be in comic books. And they're all for Gold Key. I created Dr. Spectre, Dagar,
nice.
and Drag. And of those, the one I loved the most, and probably of all the comics I wrote, the one I have the most personal attachment to was Dr. Spectre. And I would love to see that revived with me writing it again. But there's rights issues that are all tied up. And I would like to see that done in a live action, either a movie or a TV show. It almost became a TV series at one point, but it never happened.
That's so cool.
For crazy reasons. And so I don't like to create characters for other people, because then they own them. And then when they reap the I did create some characters for another company that I'm not going to mention here. It's one of the no-nos. But when you create something and you get paid a few $100s or whatever, and they make millions out of it, I don't want to do that anymore. So I will write stories based on existing characters, but I won't create a new character unless I own it.
Okay.
Fair
I
enough.
love that. That's good to know. That's a really great view as well. Like I've never looked at it from that perspective, but I'm not a writer, not a creator. We've got New York Hunter Impressions. New York is a regular of ours. As a big mecha fan since Robotech, what were your favorites in the times where you helped introduce the genre?
And you get a little distorted then. What about Robocop?
No. As this gentleman is a fan since Robotech, which is a robot series.
Robotech.
He wants to know, what were your favorites in the times where you helped introduce the genre? Like you said, you got to see these shows from Japan, like Voltron, Robotech. What were your favorites in that era?
Ultraman would be my favorite. And I saw clips. My friend from Japan would bring over these tapes that had excerpts, not the whole shows. And there were 2 episodes of the Spider-Man show, but I mostly saw excerpts, and they were all kind of the same. They were a big giant robot fighting a dinosaur-like monster, And so I don't know if I had any favorites beyond Ultraman. After Ultraman, they were all kind of the same. I thought,
Yep.
they all followed the same formula.
Yeah, that they did. I remember when I was younger, there was an episode where Ultraman fought like somebody in a Godzilla suit with a frill, like from a
Big
frill
frill
blizzard.
around his neck. Yeah.
Yes, and that stuck with me for.
Yeah, and then he rips it off at the end, and then BB King comes in and starts singing "The Frill Is Gone." No, I'm just
kidding. Autocorrect Primer, who is a regular, but Autocorrect Primer is a comic book writer and artist. Really talented guy. He wants to know, what would you have liked to write, or what would have been your dream to write?
My dream, that's easy to say, because my favorite comic book artist of all time is Joe Kubert. And he did a comic book back in the early 1950s, pre-code, called Tor, about a caveman.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
that was the one I wanted to do my own version of Tor, or even do Tor. When I did Track in the Sky Gods for Gold Key, I kept pushing. Let's do a prehistoric strip. Let's do a prehistoric book. No, nobody's going to want to buy a prehistoric book because you already have Turok. And then what happened was Eric von Daniken started making a hit with these books about chariots of the gods and aliens and all that. And so my editor said, "Hey, we want you to do a chariots of the gods type comic book." And I said, "Can I set it in prehistoric times?" He said, "Sure, okay." So I got Tor book, sort of, but it was disguised as an Eric von Daniken Chariots of the Gods book. But that's what I would like to do. And this almost happened, but unfortunately, the guy who owned the company, who accepted was going to do it, died. And so that was the end of that. I would like to do a revival of picking up right for where it left off when the comic score came in, of Dick Brieford's 1950s Frankenstein comic book.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
I would like to do that. The only, I'm writing a lot of comics again for Shudder and for Vampires Carmilla, but I don't want to do, I'm sick of superheroes. I never liked sword and sorcery. I've written a ton of sword and sorcery, but I'd like to bring Dr. Spectre back. And,
Yeah.
that would keep me busy for a long time.
All right, so there are questions. I just want to bring up Autocorrect Primer, who asked that question, actually still owns some of those books that you worked on. And I thought that's pretty cool that should be brought out. Jimmy, can you bring up the next question? Beautiful. Timos asks, when the Dinobots were introduced and appeared in seasons 1 and 2, were there any Dinobots that didn't show, or any ideas of characters that could have been made but were rejected at that time?
Not that I recall. I didn't introduce any new Dinobots, and the old ones were given to me. So I just, used stories with what they had, with the toys were. And I don't think any of them ever got rejected. I don't recall any. I don't know if hardly any of my Transformers scripts got rejected. Those days you submitted a premise, and if the premise was accepted, then it would go to what they called an outline. In movies, they would call that a treatment. And then if the treatment got approved, then you would go to the script. And the script was always the easiest part of writing it, because it was just kind of filling the blanks. You always did the hard work in the treatment, in the outline, working the plot out, the characters were doing. So, but to answer that question, I don't think there were any. I can't think of any Dinobots episodes that I pitched as a premise, and I did not introduce any new Dinobots.
Okay.
So I got a question to piggyback off of that one. Being that I noticed that you said that some of the characters were given to you, and you had to write around said characters that was given. Let's deal with the Dinobots. If you had your choice of Dinobots to create for the Transformer series, which would those be? Being that you are paleontologist, what dinosaurs would you have gone with?
Oh, well, the ones that they had were all the pretty, and of course the Pteranodon was not a dinosaur, that was a pterosaur, but they went with the standard iconic, the Tyrannosaurus and the Triceratops. I probably would have brought in some of the more obscure ones, a Pachycephalosaur with a bone head, or an Ankylosaur, or I hate the word raptor. It doesn't mean dinosaur. It means a bird. It means a bird of prey. So I'm not going to call them raptors. Those are called dromaeosaurs. I would, with the sickle claws, on the high feet. I would maybe be one of those, I don't know. I had never really thought about it. I never thought beyond what I was doing there, and it was hard to keep up with everything. I was going to a paleontology conference at Berkeley, and I got the assignment. 3 of my premises got accepted, and I had to knock out, like in 3 days, 3 complete scripts, 65 page long scripts in 3 days before I went, and that was, and this was on a typewriter. Remember typewriters?
Yeah.
Right.
I learned how to type.
Maybe you saw one at the Smithsonian Institution or somewhere on exhibit. But typewriters were things we used to write scripts on. And then I remember when the IB with liquid paper, and
Right.
that my friend, our producer Mike Nesmith's mother invented. But then I remember IBM Selectric typewriters came in, and I bought mine just at the time Transformers started, and they had the correcting ribbon, so you could go back without putting the goop on there, and erase a word and type it over. It looked real good. So I wrote those in a row, one per day, and those are.
So, did you have
hectic
anything to? I'm going to jump these folks because I'm a host. Did you have anything to do with Dinobot Island?
With what? Dinobot what?
Dinobot Island. There was a series. There were 2 episodes.
Oh,
called The
Dinobot
Glut.
Island. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
is
was
that
one of my
you?
favorite. I wrote two-parters. One
Yes,
was
his version of the Dinobots.
Megatron's Master Plan, and
One of
one
my
was
favorites.
Dinobot Island. And I liked the two-parters for a couple of reasons. One is the hardest part was always coming up with the plots, and a two-parter you just came up with one plot, and you spread it out over 2 episodes. And in doing that, still you got paid for 2 episodes, but you're really only wanting one long episode, and it gave you the opportunity to do little bits of business and character things that you didn't have time to do in the regular half-hour show. I know in Dinobot Island there was a thing where, what was it? There was a pterosaur or something, and got the attention of one of the I can't remember, but the one of the robots come in and he zaps it, and it was just like a bit. It had nothing to do with the story really. It was just a character thing, a little bit of business, and we couldn't have done that in the half show because there wouldn't have been time for it. There wouldn't have been space for it. So I like those 2-part episodes for 2 reasons. Megatron's Master Plan, by the way, was based on Meet John Doe, a movie I had just seen on television like a couple nights before. And the character of Sean Berger, who's like the megalomaniac with the police force and everything, that was based directly on the Edward Arnold character in Meet John Doe. And his name, Sean Berger, I had a friend in Chicago who was mostly a serial and B-Western fan, mostly serials, movie serials. And he was always doing favors for me. He was letting me borrow videotapes and take them back to California of old serials and watch them, and give them back when I went back to Chicago for another visit. And he said, "Well, could you do me a favor?" I said, "Sure, I'll do you a favor." And what is it? "Can you write me into one of your cartoons?" And his name was Schoenberger, Jim Schoenberger. So I took the name Schoenberger and I split it, and I had Sean Berger, and that's where that came from.
I love that. That's awesome. Oh, so Rodluff has a great question that I think every one of us growing up wondered what happened here. There was a character named Hauler who appeared in vehicle mode in the first episode of Transformers. This character had no lines and never transformed and was never seen again. Was there any backstory to this missing Autobot?
If there is, I don't know it because I never heard of Hauler until tonight when you just mentioned it. I don't know if I even saw the first episode. But I didn't write the first episode.
Okay, so let me ask this question. In Transformers, didn't they contribute Hauler to being equivalent to what's his name?
Hoist.
One of the utility vehicles, a lime green one. Didn't they eventually turn that to Hauler or give him that name Hauler?
They
Like your
ultimately
Inferno
did toy line
and
wise.
Grapple. Yeah.
Yeah. Toy line wise, they did. but he
Okay.
never got anything more in the cartoon. And I think one
Wow.
of our viewers is just trying to see if Don has,
Okay.
any insight for us. New York Hunter. Now, this is a good question because I grew up on this cartoon. He says he knows you're tired of superheroes, but the X-Men are his favorite team. Do you have any good stories about working on the X-Men animated series, which I think
But
shaped a lot of our
story,
lives?
the
Yep.
only thing I can remember is I had a real hard time getting on that show. It's funny after during Marvel productions, when I was writing all those Spider-Man and his Amazing Men shows, I got divorced. I mean, it was a surprise to me, but I was financially wiped out. And I get every once in a while I get financially wiped out, but I always make a comeback somehow. And Stan really liked my story, Stan Lee, because he would single me out to write specific episodes like the um, uh, origin of Spider-Man. And all my friends in the story of Art of Heart, oh, these are great stories because your scripts are just like the comic book, because a lot of the writers working on those shows just came out of Saturday morning. They weren't comic book writers or comic book readers. And then I got this divorce hit, and I couldn't get a job from me. All these guys that I worked with that said how much they liked my stories ended up as producers and directors and things on other shows. Not one of them ever called me, except Bryce Malick on Transformers. And I finally got in touch with Eric Lewald. Somebody gave me his name, and he was a storyteller. He and his wife Julia, and who I'm still friends with, and they let me write one episode. And by that time, I didn't really know who the new, because I wasn't reading the comic books. I didn't know who Jubilee and Sabretooth. Didn't have a clue. But they gave me an assignment. They wanted a story where Sabretooth and was it? I don't think it was Wolverine. I can't remember who it was, but it was called Dangerous Reunions or something like that. Anyway, so I wrote a script and they bought it. So I was only able to get on one episode of X-Men. And I've never
Okay.
really felt part of the gang because I never get invited to any of their panels or parties or anything. So I did one episode of the X-Men, which then got adapted to a comic book. I forgot who wrote the comic book. I didn't, but I got credited as plot by Don Glut. So I can't really tell you about the X-Men. I was never really an X-Men fan in the comics. My interest went in different directions.
I gotcha. Hey, I gotcha. Well, thank you for that. X-Men, the old X-Men show, kind of, I felt like, and the comics. Let's be honest. The X-Men comics as well taught you how to treat people, right? Like that was the gist of it. Like, we're going to accept everybody for who they are, and we're going to treat people the way we want to be treated. And that's just something that I think shaped everybody in this chat, everybody watching. The X-Men is definitely one of those, stories or teams that really just taught us how to be good people. Now, this is. I'm sorry.
They did a story now. They did a story now where all the X-Men go trans. You could call them the X-Men, couldn't you?
Yes, you could. Yes, you could. Yes, you could.
You'll probably censor that. Yes.
Derek Bigsby. Derek is a longtime friend of ours in the show. Wants to know, what are your plans for this summer? What are you doing? What are you getting up to? Are you doing conventions? Are you writing? Going on tour
Well,
with a band?
I do conventions when I'm invited, but I'm almost never invited to conventions.
Uh,
They have conventions. A lot of them. I live in Burbank, and down the street, 7 minutes away, is a Marriott Hotel, and they have conventions there. In fact, the Transformers convention is going to be there coming up next month.
Yep, March
I don't know
15th, TFCon.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm invited. I can't get anybody to confirm it. I'm usually invited to that, but all the conventions that fit within the realm of things I'm doing, I never get invited to any of these things. If I did, I would go, because I like doing them. I love doing panels. I love doing presentations. I do a thing that's sort of like this show. I do an hour-long show called Ask Don Glut Anything, unless they're about the taboo subjects, And I just get up there and people ask me questions for an hour and gives me the opportunity, like here, to get into some details that I don't normally get to do in just a regular interview, and where they ask you one question and you got one sentence answer. So I like doing those. This summer, I'm just hoping to keep working. I'm writing. I'm just knocking those comic book strips out like crazy. If I had the money, I would make another movie. I got 2 more movies I want to do. 2 more movies I want to make. A sequel to my Tales of Frankenstein movie, and also a kind of a combination vampire and what was that Charles Bronson? Death Wish. It was a combination of the two, a vigilante vampire.
What? I would love that. I would watch that in a heartbeat.
Blown away street scum that the cops can't get, that kind of thing. And and I'd like to play more music. I mean, I really miss that more than anything.
I miss the music too.
Getting up there at a microphone and, with a guitar and playing with a band,
Absolutely. There's nothing quite like that. Derek, Autocorrect Primer, wants to wish you a happy early birthday. You're February 19th, I believe.
Yeah, and, just for a few days. I won't tell you what the number is. If you go to my website, you can do the, but I'm not going to say it in public out loud,
Yeah, no worries. Derek's is
alternative. It's better than the alternative. And I'm really happy that, I'm still working at my age. I'm probably busier in some ways than I've ever been. And, so many of my contemporaries who, like me, were doing a lot of comics and things in the 70s. They're all retired or on Facebook talking about stuff they did, a half a century ago. I'm not a has-been, folks, Retiring for me is what you do when you get a flat on the freeway and the AAA comes and they retire.
You're funny, Don. You are very funny. So Hrodruff wants to know, what did you find the biggest challenge about writing in general?
Biggest challenge was when I first started getting anything sold, because when you're starting, you're not very good. And, luckily in those days, you didn't need an agent necessarily. You could write a whole novel and send it out in the mail with a return envelope, and an editor would read it and either buy it or send it back, sometimes with a letter saying, I didn't like this or I didn't like that, or, I got one that said, "Come now, Mr. Glut." I mean, I say all those rejection slips. I'm going to have them hard bound sometime in a volume. But, getting started, getting that first sale is so important, because a lot of writers, and artists and actors, and, when that first time they got they're sitting there on the fence and with a publisher or a producer or editor, and it's live or die. Are they going to buy it or not? And they don't buy it. They get all depressed, and they never write again or draw another picture. And you can't have that. You got to keep working at it and keep sending things out and keep meeting people, and sooner or later, if you're any good and you're persistent enough, you're gonna break. You break into being a professional, and then from then it's easier. A lot of people. I mean, I got to a point where I could sell a book just by calling up the publisher. Hey, I got an idea for a book. What do you think? Whoa, go ahead, go for it. And but it took a long time to get there, and it took a lot of rejections to get there too.
Good to know. I appreciate that. Awesome Optimus Prime 17 says, hello to Chris and everyone here. But Don, did you have a hand in the season 1 episode Divide and Conquer?
Not only did I hand it, I had all these fingers in it typing it because that episode. I think it was
Yeah.
my very first. I think it was the episode.
Yeah, I think that's what we started the show at. I think Awesome Optimus Prime came in a little later. But yeah, that's a good question. Absolutely. Do you think the biz is a lot different now versus then in terms of starting out and getting jobs?
Yeah, it was a lot more of a home spun kind of family situation back then, where you could. I mean, I would just call. I would find out who the story editor was of a show was, and I'll call them up and say, "Hi, my name's Don Glut." Sometimes I didn't have any credits yet, or maybe I had one or two, and I said, and they would give me a chance. Come into the office and we would talk. I don't know if you can do that anymore. I think you need an agent, but since there are no more Saturday mornings, and so that whole world is gone.
Yep.
There's nobody to call up, and as far as comics go, and I think novels now you need an agent for. It's a lot different. It's not, the personal aspect is pretty much gone, I think, and it's kind of sad because I like to sit down and look a person in the eye, and I hate where everything is done through texting and emails and things. So much, you know, sometimes you walk into an office and you either strike a connection with the person on the other side of the desk. They either like you immediately or they don't. You know, you sometimes you have the job before you even display what your talents are. In
Yep.
those
Just
days,
based
if
off
they just like,
personality alone.
yeah, I had an experience. I really learned this. I went to New York in 1973, ostensibly to go to the comic convention that they were having, New York Comic Con, but also to make some connections because I was mainly working for Gold Key, a little bit for Warren, um, but mostly I wanted to, I was doing a little work at Marvel through Roy Thomas, who was a friend of mine, but I was getting things like writing articles for Monsters Unleashed or Vampire Tales. Nothing. I wanted to write comic books. So Jerry Conway had a party, and I just met Jerry up at Marvel. I went up there to visit Roy, and Jerry said, "We're having a party. Why don't you come?" So I went to the party. It was on a Saturday night, and I struck up a conversation in the hallway that connected the living room and bathroom. We're in a narrow area. Right? I'm talking to Denny O'Neil from DC, and I mentioned I was a writer. We struck a nice conversation. So Denny said, "Why don't you come down, bring what you brought, come down to my office on Monday morning?" So I bright and early got down to DCOMs. I got there when Denny arrived, and we went into his office, and on his desk was a stack of manila envelopes about this high, okay? And he said to me, "Do you know what's in those envelopes?" And I said, "Well, I would imagine scripts that have been submitted." And he said, "Yeah, there might be a masterpiece in there. Do you think I have time to read all those?" And he called the secretary and he said, "Mail these back, unopened." Then he looked at me and said, "Don, what did you bring me?" And I handed him the scripts. And of course, he read them, but he bought them. And I realized then how important it is to network and meet people. They used to say, "It's not what you know, it's who you know." It's not that either. It's who knows you. And
Yeah.
people to hire their friends and their relatives, people they're comfortable with. When you hire somebody that you don't know, you can be open. You could be in a lot of trouble. Maybe they have a personality, a drug or alcohol problem that is going to somehow show on the set or in the office or whatever. And so it's best to work with people that you're comfortable with. And a lot of people don't do that. They think It's just their work and their brilliance and all that is going to get them the job, but that's not necessarily true.
Yeah, absolutely. Autocorrect Primer wants to know, what are your feelings on AI taking over just about everything?
I am against AI for the mere fact that first, I don't see how it's possible to write a book or a script or a novel in AI. I mean, I can't figure it. It's like science. That's science fiction. But in many cases with artists, I don't think it's a tool like a pencil is a tool or a computer, word processing is a tool. I think it's an excuse. People either who are too lazy to do the work themselves or aren't talented enough to do the work. So I am not an AI fan.
Okay. I'm going to ask a question not Transformers related. I'm going to ask a question dinosaur related. In your years working in that field, did you get to, as a writer and a creator, did you get to name any dinosaurs?
No, but I was hoping one would be named after me, but it hasn't happened yet. I did discover what turned out to be a new genus and species of extinct dolphin.
Oh, that's
And we
amazing.
have it in our museum in our collections. I found this. I found the snout sticking out of the. I was on my one and only real fossil dig out in Orange County, and they were going to flood that whole area. So we were allowed to go up there, and I was in a local dinosaur club, and so we were allowed. One of the paleontologists who was in our club said, "Hey, I can take you all up there, and we can look for fossils." So everybody's and there was a bone on the surface everywhere you looked. There were bone fragments. But I got tired of looking up there with everybody else. I looked down, there was a ravine. So I went down the ravine and I saw sticking out of the ground what looked to me like an ocarina. You know what an ocarina is? It's like
Absolutely.
you play,
It's a flute.
and
Yep.
it's like kind of like a small version of what Cor played Lure de Franklin in those movies. Anyway, um, I saw this sticking out of the ground. So I went down there and I picked it up. And I walked up the hill again and I said, is this anything? And a couple of paleontologists who were there, suddenly their eyes on me, they descended on me, took this thing out of my hand, and they scraped a little of the dirt off of it. And it was the snout of this dolphin, a previously unknown genus and species of dolphin from I think it was the Miocene. And it became the source of a legal battle between the Natural History Museum in Los Angeles, where I'm now a volunteer fossil preparator, and also the university or whatever it was in Orange County. And the guy actually went to jail from the Orange County guy because he wouldn't give it up. It was in his possession. So he went to jail for a while. Well, anyway, when I started volunteering at the Natural History Museum, during our lunch period, I was talking to one of the paleontologists there who was his specialty was whales and dolphins. And I'm telling him the story. He says, "Oh, I never heard that story before." I said, "I'll bring you a photo," because somebody took a photo of me on the site holding this fossil in my hand, looking very proud and. So I brought the photo in, and he looks at the photo and goes, and then he goes like this, and he points to a cabinet behind my head, and he opens up the cabinet and he pulls out the fossil. So that brought
That's so cool.
closure to that. So we have it in our collections now. No, it did not get named after me. I was hoping it would be, but I haven't named anything because I don't go out. I don't write scientific papers, and I don't go out in the digging up bones. So I'm probably never going to get to name anything.
I would imagine that should have been named after you, though, if you found the piece. Like, to me, it's
Right.
kind of like a no-brainer. I do want to ask a
I
question.
know,
We have about
it's a
10.
joke, we have a big new sauropod skeleton in our museum,
Yep.
It's a new genus and species that has not been named yet, but it was found in the deposits, and the bones are kind of greenish in color. So the head of the department sent out an email to everybody. Does anybody think of a new name for this dinosaur? We're calling it Natalie with a G, because the site was covered with gnats that were flying all around. So they named it Natalie. Okay, that's the nickname to it. So I said, well, green. It's big. It's strong. It's huge. How about and because a lot of dinosaurs are now getting the name. The second half of the name is Titan, instead of Sora or something. How about Holcotitan Stan Kirbiensis? And
I love that.
but they're not going to name that.
Oh my God. So Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and the Hulk. That's just amazing.
Or maybe
That
Right.
is,
Lee Kirbiensis. That's what it was.
I love that.
Yeah, Holcotitan
We
Stan
have about 10
Kirbiensis.
minutes left. And there's something I want to bring up real quick that I think the folks watching would love. Can you tell the folks in the chat and that are watching about your shirt? Because that shirt means something. And
Oh, the shirt
can
I'm
you give
wearing?
us? Yes, yes. I think everybody watching would absolutely love to hear
Okay.
about that shirt.
First season, the writers, I don't know if the actors or artists or anybody, I imagine we all got them. We got these free T-shirts, these Transformers T-shirts. And when the year I got them, you have to see what I did in the summer. That summer I went on a trip, vacation to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And it's a beautiful place. Anyway, I was going through all the shops and things, and little kids they were pointing. They knew the show because they knew the shirt because they knew the show. So everybody in Santa Fe was pointing my shirt, and it's a little tight now. I haven't put on weight really, but I've been working out for the past 15 years, so I've gotten more muscular, and so it's a little tight where it was a lot more loose fitting back when I first got it. But I have the shirt. I also have a go bike, and
Nice.
the thing was back then I was writing 3 giant robot shows simultaneously. I was working on Transformers, GoBots, and Mighty Orbots. And after
Oh
a
yeah.
while, they would get mixed up in my head, and I would start writing character names like from the GoBot shows into the Transformers episodes, and vice versa, and then with Mighty Orbots. So those shows had to get some pages rewritten.
I was going to say, I think we might have had to do some rewrites. Awesome Optimus Prime 17 states, you have the Transformers Bible. In the episode Heavy Metal War, are you responsible for creating and naming the Constructicons such as Devastator or any part in all?
Those are all in the Bible. Everything I did
So-
that was like that was a character that was character related or an ability they had, like that was all in the Bible. And the Devastators, where they all came to be one giant robot, right?
Correct.
Is that what that was? Yeah,
Yes.
and I liked that because of that and a lot of the Japanese stuff I was watching.
Yep.
And I don't know if you know this. When I wrote the Dinobots episodes, I was copying. I mean, not physically. I'm not plagiarizing, but I would the mood or the spirit of the fights I was seeing in the Godzilla films. I remember there was one I saw where Rodan gets Godzilla by the tail, and he's pulling Godzilla back, and Godzilla is trying with the front paws, trying to dig his way into the ground for some support. And I put that in one of my scripts, thinking that it was going to be the same. But in the movie, that went on like maybe for a half minute, or so. Where on the TV show, it went on like one quick shot. So it didn't. The animation wasn't. I didn't think the animation was very good, but it didn't convey what I was really seeing up
Trying
here.
to get across. Yep.
I was seeing Godzilla and with Mothra flying and all that. That's what I was seeing.
I love that. And I remember that Godzilla movie vividly. I watched those movies with my son quite a bit, the old ones. My grandfather raised me on those Godzilla movies. Like that was our Friday nights, rent a Godzilla
Now,
movie and hang out with grandpa, you know?
now
But
this you might find. Oh, go ahead. Go on.
no, please
I was
speak.
going to say
I'm not.
this you might find interesting regarding the Dinobots. When when they were presented to me to write into a script, they didn't have names yet. They were
Okay.
just, and so I had to come up with names. But those aren't the names they used. I had, like Tyrannobot and Tricerobot, things like that, which I wanted to keep in with the Autobot names, and they didn't
Yep.
like those, and they Grimlock and all the others.
That's so cool that at least you had the opportunity to come up with some.
Right.
New York Hunter Impressions wants to know, and no, nobody has asked about Dungeons and Dragons yet. With your interest in monsters, um, how about the characters that fight the in Dungeons and Dragons? Hopefully, I'm wording this right. I'm trying to see where New York Hunter's coming with this. If Chris or Jimmy want to jump in and maybe help me out with this one.
No, I was never asked to do Dungeons and Dragons. With me, getting on those shows was always very, very difficult. I usually found out
Okay.
about them when they were almost all filled up as far as writers go, and I would call up, and if I could get on at all, I would get maybe the last episode, or maybe the last two episodes if I was real lucky. So, if they had asked me to write one, I would have written one. Never saw one, but that doesn't mean anything. I can adapt very well to things I've never seen before, and I've done it plenty of times. Um, when are you going to be on Hollywood Memories? I said, we're gonna.
Yep.
Okay, if Hollywood Memories, those of you that don't know, there's no giant robots on it. Hollywood Memories is a show on YouTube. The actress Beverly Warren is the hostess of. Now, Beverly, if the name is not familiar, if you saw her, you would recognize her instantly. She started her first professional acting job was when she was about 8 years old in a movie called Superman and the Mole Man. She's in that. And, she's gone up through Old Yeller and The Lone Ranger and Dragnet and all kinds of movies. She was in Spider Baby. That's one of her big fan favorites. She was on Star Trek. Anyway, she has a show. And she was in the last movie I made, which was Tales of Frankenstein. And she wanted to do an episode about Tales of Frankenstein and her being on it and how we worked together and everything. So that was supposed to tape yesterday. And it got postponed until there was a con next month. If I get invited to the TF Con, that's what they wanted to do it. So I postponed it in case I do get invited to the TF Con. So we're going to do on the second. We're going to record it the second Saturday of April, and assuming I'm still alive by then. And I don't know when it'll actually be on, but because it'll be on YouTube, it'll be on like this show. It'll be on forever, and even after that.
I'm just reaching out to somebody for you real quick. All right. All right. Well, that's really cool. I look forward to watching that. We have about a minute left. We're kind of wrapping up at this point in time. Chris, do you have anything you want to contribute? Usually I have you like talking so much, but I kind of been liking hearing Don's stories. So I haven't gone to Jimmy or Chris, and I feel bad. But
I've been like the producer in the background, just geeking out over here. I think it's been great. It's been an honor.
I don't feel bad at all, man. This is about a legend, brother. Again, I'm sitting here learning some things that I did not know, understanding some things.
I'm sorry.
I said, legend dead. I'm still alive. And
Heroes.
Heroes, then.
Okay, we're a hero. We'll go with hero. So I'm learning, understanding some things, getting a better aspect and perspective of the way things were when it came to the um the the creative aspect of writing and things, that because one thing that people don't know about me, some people do, I'm a writer myself. I'm not a story writer, but I write poetry, and I understand the work and the everything that goes into it. And I have been tasked with one assignment to where I had to create something around something that was already formed. And I'm gonna tell you, that's a job within itself, especially if you're not the original creator. So man, I'm just soaking up all the knowledge that he's pouring out on this, and it gives me a better appreciation for the work, not only myself, but for the work that he has put in. Because being in the shoes, when you have to, hey, I already got a character, I already got characteristics, write me a story. And you be like, well, you just laid this on me today, and you want me to create something about somebody I don't know. So, man, love it.
Yeah, it's really just been insightful. It's been wonderful. Honestly, like so much more than I even thought I'd learn. I got to learn tonight. Um, we're going to share your GoFundMe again in the chat, but some of the folks here, autocorrect primer, Derek stated he loved the Lone Ranger. He's got it in his calendar, and thank you for everything you've done. New York Hunter Impressions has stated, thank you for being here. It has been an honor. So, the folks here in the chat, they're appreciating your time, what you're giving us as a community. You're helping us understand some of our memories and how they got crafted.
Mhm.
You sculpted so much of what inspired us to be what we are today. And there's no other thing to say but thank you. Thank you for
Well,
writing for us.
I didn't
Thank-
direct you in the wrong direction. I mean, that could
Oh no,
it
no.
could be happening.
I feel I'm a very successful person with a life that is a true gift from God. And a lot of those lessons were learned from your writings. So thank you.
Thank you. If you want to keep up to what I'm doing, my website is just my name, donaldfglut.com.
Got it. We were going to ask you that. That was Jimmy G usually comes in and starts asking those questions. So yeah, Jimmy, if you want to put that up, I'm going to read Optimus Prime off real quick. Awesome Optimus Prime states, thank you so much. I had fun with you guys and Don with what time I had since I came in late. Optimus, thank you. You asked some great questions tonight. Big Easy is a regular of ours. Great show. Love the stories and the information Donald Glut has shared. Timos, who asked some questions. Thank you for being here, Donald. And thanks for another
Thanks
great
for
show.
having me.
Yeah, no, we loved it. Autocorrect
Thank you.
Primer is already at donaldfglut.com. Now, like I said, Autocorrect Primer, he's a comic book artist and writer. He also writes novels of his own. So he's someone that has actually followed you long term. So it's really nice to even give what you're giving here. We also have Rodolph. I hope I'm saying
Somebody's following me. I should be paranoid.
No, he's out in South Carolina or North Carolina. He's not going to get to you.
Okay.
I think I'll try to get an agent when my novel's finished based on this discussion. It's a good idea, and I never thought of it being done before. So guess what? You just gave some insightful information to somebody that's aspiring to be a writer, and hopefully they get something published. So again, there's a lot of thanks here in this group. Jimmy, do you have anything you want to add as we wrap up?
No, I just think, I mean, it's amazing. Again, I'd love to see. I wish I could go to TFCon LA. If you're going to be there, I know probably Derek might be contacted. I don't know. You never know what may be happening there. But
Derek is BotCon Chicago, actually.
yeah.
And in fact, offline, we got some things to discuss about that, Don, about BotCon.
Yeah. So, but it would be great to meet you in person, Don. I think again, legendary. Everything. Just reading about just your filmography, your writing credits and stuff. I'm like, man, I remember that. I remember that as a kid. I remember that as a kid, and it was just like, oh my gosh, again, like Billy said, you just shaped our childhood.
And we appreciate you, all of us, the community. And here we go. To bypass the GoFundMe fees, folks, you can donate via PayPal at TF3PK. Use friends and family, and Chris makes sure that all proceeds go to Don. If that's not just beautiful, Chris, thank you. Thank you for introducing us to Don. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing this story and helping us put a show together to help Don. Like, thank you. You are what
Thank
we
you.
do this show for. You are spreading this community into a family. You're helping us spread a beautiful community. So thank you, Chris. Truly, from the bottom of my
I
heart.
hope it's not a dysfunctional family.
No, this is not yet. Not yet.
Oh man, all I can say is thank you guys, man, because it's a wonderful thing, man. Again, I'm very compassionate when it comes to, man, our heroes such as Mr. Glut, and not only being our heroes, but those who have been um blaze makers, blaze the way for us to come behind them and study their crafts and copy their cadence to do what we do now, and they can reflect and look back on us and be like, yeah, I see my work and I see how my work has impacted, the later generation. So thank y'all, man. Thank y'all, and thank you, Mr. Glut, for having such a very, very inspiring body of work that produced what you see today with us on this panel.
Thank you. Truly, thank you. With that, we like to end our show as if it's a Naked Gun episode, and we kind of do a freeze frame. So if you're a fan of Leslie Nielsen and the Naked Gun series and you'd like to join us on a Naked Gun ending, we will be ending the show shortly, and we're just going to freeze up. I do like to thank everyone in the chat. Thank you for tonight. Thank you for joining us. We have more to come. Donald, you're always welcome on this show. If you ever want to get something across, please know that we will always put time aside to make sure you get out there. Chris, Don, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful night. Jimmy, as always, brother, it's a pleasure. I will see you all next week. Good night. Be safe. God bless.